The Star League. To explain the birth of the Star League, one has to learn what circumstances led to its creation. These roots go back centuries to a time when Earth was locked in a tense Cold War, one where nuclear annihilation was on the horizon at all times. Split between the Soviet sphere of influence and the Western sphere of influence, this careful balance was near destroyed when a power vacuum developed within the Soviet side. Taking advantage of the civil conflict, the Western Alliance moved in to side with the more liberal side of the Soviets and restore order. This event led to the creation of the Terran Alliance, a worldwide conglomerate of nations, all working under the same banner to improve humanity's fate. This conglomeration was responsible for the first faster-than-light capable jump ship, which led to the rapid expansion of humanity from Earth to the rest of the Sol system, and then far beyond. By the early 2200s, the Alliance had colonized hundreds of worlds, but was incapable of properly governing all of them. A series of back-and-forth political conflicts combined with real military conflict with the colonies created a deep apathy within the Alliance. Corruption reigned supreme, and the colonies, which regularly found themselves either independent or part of the Alliance, depending on the current administration, were kept in constant flux. This eventually led to the demarcation proclamation by the Alliance. This made all colonies beyond a 30 light-year radius free of Alliance control if they wanted it or not. The resulting wave of mass starvation and rioting on colony worlds created further political instability on Earth and within the new Alliance borders. In the decades following the demarcation declaration, the Terran Alliance slowly descended into chaos. The two main political parties, the expansionists and the liberals, quickly followed one another at the reins of power, but none could solve the Alliance's problems. In the meantime, the Alliance Navy took on a life of its own. The charismatic Admiral James McKenna began construction of a real Blackwater Navy out of what was little more than armoured troop transport service. Essentially operating without political oversight, the Alliance Navy was free to construct 6 warships, starting with the TAS Dreadnought in 2300, and 20 support vessels until the Civil War began in 2314. The political turmoil began to escalate that year, when the newly emergent People's Liberation Party began its rise. Both expansionists and liberals were quick to offer the PLP's leader, Grant Zoli, concessions for an alliance. Zoli, who had formed the PLP as a money-making scheme, decided for an alliance with the highest bidder. Initially accepting the expansionists' offer, Zoli decided a month he would promise to join forces with the liberals after their next election. Soon afterwards, on September 5, 2314, his corpse was found in his New Zealand mansion. The latent civil war then escalated into a bloody global conflict. On June 2, 2315, Fleet Admiral McKenna's warships destroyed 2 small islands, Strand Rock near Scotland and an unnamed one near Australia, in a show of strength, and demanded the founding of a new government and the formation of a new state to replace the Alliance and restore Terra's rule over the human sphere. While an overwhelming majority of the Alliance global militia flocked to his banner in support among the popular sword, the leadership of the opposing parties refused to surrender. The Civil War was ended by bloody orbital bombardments and a global manhunt conducted by McKenna's colonial marines. While the surviving leaders of the expansionists and liberals were turned over to local authorities and sentenced to long prison sentences, or executed, McKenna ushered the Hegemony Charter, officially ending the Terran Alliance. After McKenna's death, the political landscape began to tip back into chaos. The main source of conflict was his successor. Although his son Conrad was ruled out by the High Council, his nephew, Michael Cameron, a passionate researcher and modern Renaissance man, was chosen as a candidate. The other chosen candidate the council was settling on was Graham Nellis, a conservative politician and former HAF Marine officer with a distinguished career. As no agreement within the High Council could be reached, the matter was settled in a general election. During the tightly controlled campaign, Cameron and Nellis frequently held debates, in which Nellis came across as a self-assured but smug career politician, while Michael Cameron's quiet competence won him voters. In the end, Michael Cameron won the election and was sworn in as Director General on January 17, 2340. Once elected, Michael Cameron showed a scientific affinity comparable to the late Terran Alliance. He created the Hegemony Research Alliance Department to centralize and coordinate non-military, scientific research. Non-traditional economic systems were encouraged on selected worlds. The Hegemony civil service was reinvented following the latest series of management, and advancement within the bureaucracy was dependent on merit-based tests. Unfortunately, he also showed a streak of the Cameron romanticism his descendants would often display by formally creating a new nobility system, patterned after medieval English feudalism, on January 1st, 2351. The initial list of peers, the beginning of neo-feudalism, included 31 men and women who Cameron thought deserving of worthy titles and land grants. Later that year, he laid the path for the Cameron Dynasty with the Cameron Edict of 2351, which allowed his daughters to retain the Cameron name through marriage. When Michael Cameron retired in 2367, his daughter, Margaret, married to a wealthy industrialist and a retired Navy officer, was swiftly elected and sworn in as Director General after a short campaign without an opposing candidate. Margaret Cameron refocused the Terran hegemony on military matters by introducing new draft legislation which would demand every citizen of age to serve in their homeworld militia and serve 1 month per year in military maneuvers until their 55th birthday. The contested military recruitment and preparedness bill was finally approved by the Terran Parliament after Margaret Cameron threatened to bypass it entirely. Ironically, further advancement in the applied sciences, such as the first primitive work mechs, ended James McKenna's vision of terror as the bonfire of human knowledge. Faced with increasing diplomatic tension, Margaret Cameron issued the Mother Doctrine in 2380, which was in practice a blacklist of technology which was not to be exported outside of the hegemony. This policy would officially remain in place until the destruction of the hegemony in the First Succession War. Suffering from cancer, Margaret Cameron retired in 2382 and was succeeded by her son Raymond. Heavy-handed protectionist and militarist policies such as the 2385 crisis on Bryant over the draft, which Raymond solved by threatening military action, turned the hegemony citizenry against the Director General. When his wife Skye, native Cameron McQuiston, became pregnant, Richard, who had been sterile since suffering from a jet fighter accident at the age of 24, flew into a rage, arrested and accused his brother Brian, the likely culprit, of high treason. 2 days before the trial was set to begin, Raymond would die from a heart attack, leaving the High Council to pick up the pieces his unpopular reign had left behind. With no other Cameron capable of leading the hegemony, the High Council decided to press ahead and trial Brian Cameron, who was found innocent of all save infidelity. In September 2388, Brian Cameron was confirmed as new Director General. His lasting legacy would be the Succession Bill of 2392, which made it near impossible for a non-Cameron to become Director General, and a massive military build-up starting in 2391, which included the development and construction of the first Castle Bryan military complex. After Brian's death in a freak accident involving a raging bull on Elba in 2403, his younger sister Judith promptly decided to nominate herself for the position of Director General and was confirmed, despite misgivings of the Council, for the position within 2 months. By and large, she continued her brother's politics and further reinforced hegemony planets with Castle Bryans. During her reign, the Age of War began, and several military confrontations with the Capellan Confederation and Draconis Combine between 2407 and 2409 tested the resolve and capability of the HAF. When Judith Cameron retired in 2419, the son of Brian Cameron and Catherine McQuiston was confirmed as Director General. Notable for the seizure of Kentaurus from the Federated Sons in 2431 and a change to the hegemony nomination laws in 2432, which allowed a Director General to choose their own successor, Richard Cameron soon died due to a heart attack. His son Jacob Cameron proved to be such an unpopular and unreasonable ruler he was nearly assassinated in 2448. More capable as a warrior than a politician or diplomat, he undertook campaigns against the Capellan Confederation and the Federated Sons. It was under his watch that the hegemony developed the battle mech in 2439, a research avenue which not only affected other military programs, but the build of a whole new arm of the HAF left the hegemony lacking from basic goods. Following Jacob was his son Theodore and granddaughter Elizabeth, both incapable rulers remembered for little but their indulgent lifestyles and the successes the HAF enjoyed against the encroaching great houses. When Elizabeth died of New Earth pox in 2501, the hegemony public was openly discussing dissolving the government. Political parties had risen up on many worlds, often riding on waves of particularism and secessionist agitation, while diplomatic relations with the neighbouring realms had soured. Deborah Cameron assumed the position of Director General in a hegemony deep in crisis. Deflating much of the protest by allowing the anti-Cameron agitation to run its course, while taking measures to rein in the rampant spending, after a few years the political situation in the hegemony had stabilised again. Her foreign policy was similarly remarkable. The Ares Convention stipulated the creation of boards of inquiry, an investigative commission for conventions violations and mediation, a role which the Terran Hegemony was uniquely suited for. Starting in 2502, she outlined her strategy of aggressive peacemaking, which would codify and reinforce the Hegemony's position as mediator with the help of superior intelligence and diplomatic corps, and began offering mediation services in return for money and transit costs. Similarly, the cooperation with the other states in the jointly owned planet, which were terraformed with Hegemony technology and jointly held, increased drastically. Originally, such joint ownerships were only offered of the Federated Suns and the Lyran Commonwealth. Eventually, they would be offered to all the Great Houses. Her major overhaul and expansion of the Hegemony Central Intelligence Department and Department of Foreign Relations sidelined the military, however, and some military cabals began to form to counteract the feared marginalization and withering of the HAF. Notable successes, such as the end to the Second Andorian War, the Commonwealth Combined Ceasefire on Arrakis, the Commonwealth League Megrez Treaty, and the Fact Peace proved her strategy right. After her retirement in 2542, her son Joseph not only continued her policies but also openly favoured diplomacy over warfare. Enraged by this, former Marine Captain Henry Green, a member of a HAF warrior cabal, shot Joseph in front of the Director General's palace on September 20th, 2549. When Joseph died 6 days later, the Hegemony descended into chaos. While the HCID opened a manhunt against disloyal military personnel, Joseph's brother Ian declared himself Director General on September 28th. Taking this as their cue, elements of the 51st Dragoon Regiment executed a coup attempt and took control of the Hegemony capital of Geneva. Ian Cameron reacted by cutting the city off from electricity and water and ordering his household guard to take the city back. After 10 days, Geneva had been won back, and after a month, the last bastion of the soldier cabal surrendered. After a quiet purge of the HAF, a very visible increase of their budget, and establishment of the Department of Military Investigations, Ian Cameron considered the supremacy of politics over the military re-established, and the coup attempt was over. Following the politics of his predecessors, Ian Cameron's foreign policy was largely centred around keeping the inner sphere peaceful. However, the Hegemony was facing a silent crisis. The easily mined natural resources of its planet would soon be depleted. Being dependent on imports from the surrounding and potentially hostile states, which could demand horrid economical and technological payment in return for raw material, was not something Ian Cameron was willing to accept. Coupled with a messianic desire to see Terra return to its position as the ruling centre of humanity, Ian Cameron drew up a 50-year plan to create a new interstellar alliance, the Star League. During the negotiations to end the Third Andorian War, he found an ally in Captain General Albert Marek. Beginning with the 2556 Treaty of Geneva between the League, Confederation and Hegemony, the ultimate success of Terran diplomacy began to take shape. Similar treaties were signed following the next decade and a half, until the Star League was officially proclaimed on July 9th, 2571, with the Director General as its hereditary First Lord.